Welcome everyone to the Admin 101, kind of like crash course, right? Little 101 crash course. Today we'll be discussing all about being an admin assistant in the entertainment industry, more specifically in animation. And the reason why specifically animation, because it's a little more complicated than live action, where you could also be an admin, but be titled as a PA as well. But they are not one in the same role. So we're kind of here to help out, demystify, difference between the two, answer any of your questions at the end, maybe clear out all qualms you may have about being an admin assistant. It does sound very scary if you haven't done it before, but it's just something that you learn and grow into, and it's really exciting when you get a boss. If they really care for you and care for your growth, it could be extremely beneficial to your career. So yeah, so I guess the first topic that we hey Anna that will be
Hi, sorry.
discussed. No worries, no worries. How is being an admin assistant different than being a PA? So essentially, being the admin world is, like I said, there's a lot of different directions you can go to as well, being an assistant. So you can be an admin assistant, for example, a director and producer like me. You could be an admin assistant for just a director as well, or just a producer. But you could also be an admin on the quote unquote corporate end, right? You could be an admin assistant for a development executive, or you could be an admin assistant for a physical production executive. Physical production, if someone doesn't know here, just to clarify, it's like basically the corporate, like production, but on the corporate end. So for that, there's many different directions you can go to, but it's pretty simple in a way that you are supporting whoever exec, director, or producer, that you're supporting, right? That you interviewed with and, um, are excited to be with, right? Because for one, you don't want to take a job if you don't get good vibes from that exec. That's a big tip. But so, the day to day, I would say for an admin assistant is just the majority of it. Honestly, this sounds really horrible, but in some capacity, but it's a lot of calendaring, right? Like you are in charge of this person's day to day. You're in charge of, figuring it out. I would say everyone says this, but it's like playing a game of Tetris, because it's true. You're playing this game of Tetris, trying to balance things around, balance meetings around. It's, I won't say it's easier as you support a higher person, but in some capacity it is, because if you are like a C-level executive assistant, then you kind of have more reins in like controlling in some capacity what time a certain meeting is at, right? Um, but whatever it may be, yes, it's like a big Tetris game. And some days it might not be fun, but some days it could be really easy. And that's just a part of life. Another aspect of being an admin assistant is you are, in a way, your exec's like right hand person, right? Like you are there to absorb, learn, and grow. Because, for me, I'm very fortunate enough to have had executives that were super nurturing of my growth, right? Like they asked me, what do you want to do? What's your future goals? Like, how can I help you reach to where you want to be? And I think that's such an important quality that, any leader should have. And that's something that you guys should be looking out for too when you guys start interviewing for admin roles. If that's something you want, you could have the opportunity to read scripts. You could have the opportunity to also help them develop. Like I do that with my producer. She has been such an integral part of my growth and where I'm going next. And I couldn't be more thankful for her each and every day. So another tip I would say is that it's the job is what you make of it, right? Like, yes, on paper, you are supporting the executive, but if you have an executive that wants to nurture you and help you grow, then not take advantage of it, but like in a way take advantage of it, right? Like, be a self-starter, like ask questions and ask, oh, like, hey, can you connect me with this person? Or like if they're more than willing to help, they are more than willing to help. And that is so important for anyone that wants to be in this industry, to make those connections as well. And then now I'm going to kind of jump over into kind of like the PA realm, where some PAs do admin work. For example, on my current show right now, we have a central PA. Her job is to do the production calendar, right? So her role is to also play Tetris, but it's a little more complicated because it depends on the studio. But for example, like Netflix, they're not in-house. They use vendor studios. So her job is to kind of work with the assistants on the vendor studio side to kind of figure out like, hey, like, what time can we have this layout review or this lighting review or animation review and things of that sort. But that PA also interacts with the producer and director as well. They're like kind of like an extension to some capacity, right? To the director and producer's assistant as well. But they are their own person. They have their own job. It's just two of them kind of collide sometimes. Another example is like she's not an art PA anymore, but when she was an art PA, she was assisting and doing some calendar stuff, very few, but some calendar stuff for the production designer and the head of art, right? The art department. So there are a lot of things to do. Same thing, calendar Tetris, but just in a different capacity where she does get to actually work on like, working with artists and like, prepping artwork for the meetings, even leading art reviews sometimes too, back in the day. But yeah, I would say, like I said, that's the major difference between being an executive assistant versus a like PA that does admin work is that one is, more so of like you are basically connected to just that one exec versus PA where it's like most likely you're more like a central PA or like, you know, like I said, the art PA, like isn't there like exact admin, but she definitely like, whenever I have a question about the art calendar, then I would go to her. So, another pro tip I have for y'all is be nice to everyone. Like, please don't like be mean or like rude. Like, be the best person you can be, best foot forward. Like, all the other assistants are also there to help you. You guys are all in the same boat. There's absolutely no reason to be an asshole to someone else. And, you know, you're all in this together, and working with agencies, for example, for me, I was very fortunate enough to have ran into like a lot of very great, amazing people. For the agencies, they are a little bit more meticulous. So when you interact with them, they do require, like, for example, like, if you set up a meeting, they're going to send you like, you know, minimum 3 times, like 2 to 3 times, like confirmation that, is this meeting set, right? I mean, it's good though. That's something that you should do as well as an admin, but that's like their standard of protocol for meetings, for example. And in terms of like other assistants at the studio, like I said, like you're same thing, you're all in this together. Befriending the other assistants is a great way to just easily be able to schedule things, right? Like for me, like, my besties, right? For example, when they were assistants at Netflix, I love them so much. And sometimes it's just really easy to be able to Slack them, right? And just be like, hey, like, is it okay if I move this meeting to this time, or like we reschedule this meeting, instead of like having to write like that whole formal email. Sometimes it's just easier to do that. But you're also making like friends out of it too, right? Like you guys, one thing to realize is that everyone is growing together, right? Like no one's really gonna stay behind as an assistant forever. Everyone levels up, everyone grows. Like the future VPs will be your VPs, and creative execs are your peers.
Brandon, what meetings do you set up as an assistant?
That's a very hard answer to have, because it could be anything, right? Like you could be setting up, a meeting with, let's say for me, I'm on the director and producing side, right? I would set up meetings for my bosses to meet up with like the creative exec for the show, the one in charge of helping development for the show. I could be setting up meetings with the head of animation, for example, or I could be setting up meetings with the heads of and the producer of the vendor studios as well. Um, I'm also setting up, if you're on a development desk, for example, you would be setting up meetings to meet with the agents, right? Or with potential writers or potential directors, right? When you have to start pitching. And or even management companies as well. But that's a whole nother topic to discuss. But you are interfacing with so many people every single day, and there is no truly really no like set meeting, right? It just really depends. If you're on like my end, you're in a production, like it could very much be unpredictable to what meetings you set up. But those are like kind of like the more general like types of meetings you would be setting up, even if you were on a development desk or a physical production desk as well. You would be creating meetings for just the other end, right? Like you would be having them meet with the producer and director, you would have them be meeting with the agents, etc., etc. That all good, Lexi?
Yeah, and also if you need some visual examples for the next question, I do have some in our communication guide.
Yeah, so let's move on to that. How do assistants communicate with each other? So, one, it depends on your studio. Let's talk internal communications first. So, for internal communications, it depends on your studio, but let's say your studio uses Slack, right? Slack, GChat, Gmail. Those are like the main three, right? And for a certain studio. So it kind of just depends, right? Like I said, like, of course, the first interaction you make would be an email, of course. But after that, it kind of is up to you to set the precedence of how do you want to communicate with them, right? Like, how close are you to them? Is it easier, and are you more comfortable with asking on Slack? There are some meetings that you should absolutely just do email. I would say always default to email if you're questioning yourself on that. It's just the best way. And for external, it's only email. Like you wouldn't really communicate with them in any other shape, or form, unless it's like at a vendor, like unless you are a studio where you work with a vendor studio. For me, we use Slack to communicate with the vendor studio assistants as well. So, like I said, it's up to you to set the precedence of like how do you want to communicate with them, but you will always start with email, and in a way you always end with emails. I would say that's kind of like the tools that we use to communicate with each other. Unless you have anything to chime in, Lexi.
Yeah, so here's what an example email could look like when you're reaching out to someone. You would make it very easy for people to pick up the information they need to keep moving on. So I reached out to this team and we accidentally emailed an exec. So to spare that person's inbox, we dropped them to BCC. And then one person jumps in with specific times. This is how an example email would look when you're reaching out to someone, just making it easy for the other parties to say, yes, this works. No, this doesn't work.
This thread looks like hundreds of emails that I see and do like every single day. And, to that point, let's say you get this email from Nanami, right? You would hop over to your calendar and kind of like check it out to see, because you would hopefully have your boss's calendar on your calendar as well, and be able to kind of identify like, okay, like which time works for them, which time doesn't. If no time works at all, you kind of have to like game plan it out, right? Be like, hey, like, to, and that's why it is important to communicate between assistants, right? Because maybe there's a meeting that you can potentially move. First, ask your boss if you would be able to move it. Always, never be afraid to ask, ever. So ask your boss if they're okay to move it. Then you would communicate with the assistant to be like, hey, like, will we be able to move it to this time instead or next week? So, and then you would go back to Nanami's email and be able to set this meeting if this meeting is a priority. Let's see, what the heck is a desk? It's kind of like lingo, right? Like saying desk is more of a lingo. I think I mentioned like a development desk, right? Like that just means that, you're an assistant in development on the development team. I rarely use the word desk that much. I just say like, assistant. So, Lexi, if there's anything you want to add to that.
I think this little section was to talk about lingo, like agency lingo.
Oh, dead. Okay, so like, oh my God, yeah. So agencies do have like their own little lingo, but studios do too, to some capacity. Like it depends on the studio. So like, let's say you get that job, first day on the job, like really learn like company culture and how they communicate with each other, right? Like, do they use like heavy abbreviations for something? Like, do they use certain words, right? But the agencies always have their same lingo. So, for example, desk, right? And then another lingo they use. Lexi, can you chime in on like another lingo they use?
Sure, shifting and reset. So when we need to reschedule a meeting, some people say, hey, can you reset this?
There's not too many, but it could be confusing when you're communicating, right? Because you're like, oh, what the heck is a reset? Like, are we just resetting this whole entire meeting, right? Like, but sometimes reset, I would say, is equivalent to reschedule, right? Like, um, shifting is equivalent to moving. Um, what's another? I mean, those are like the main three that I get from like assistants and stuff, other like agency assistants. I don't really get anything too complicated, too complicated. But just so you guys won't be like confused. Let's say you set a meeting with an agent, right, for your boss. They're going to send like an extra precautionary confirmation email to be like, are you sure like this meeting works? Which is great because if it doesn't work, then you have that thread to tell them like, hey, like, can we reschedule or reset? Whatever you want to use. Where do you want to use? And if it does work, you just email back confirm, and easy. That's it. But you should have your own due diligence to be like, hey, like confirming this is the phone number, right? Or this is the Google Meet, or this is the Zoom as well, because you want everything to run as smoothly as possible. Um, you don't want any miscommunication, and you don't want your boss to miss the call as well. There's so many minutes in the day, and it would be like rescheduling is not the funnest when it ends up being that way. What mindset do you have to support a busy exec, director, or producer? So for me, my case, I would say that it's being able to kind of left brain, right brain kind of situation, right? Because working with a producer, it's like very much like organization, like super scheduling, detail orientation, making sure everything's running, right? While for the director, it's more so about the art. Also still meetings though, by the way, that doesn't go away, but it's more about the art and like learning about those aspects. And like I said, it's like very left brain, right brain situation. I guess I could mention this. Yeah, some desks you would be actually supporting two people. Um, Even if you were on a development desk or you're on a physical production desk, which is like corporate side, you could very much be supporting two people versus one person. So, in the case of supporting more than one exec, it's just kind of figuring out one, getting to know them, right? Getting to know them, figuring out who they are and like how do they like running things, right? And then after you kind of attain all that knowledge, you could kind of like just take a step back, breathe, right? Because like no two people are going to be the same. Like I've never heard that ever be like a thing from what I've heard. So, kind of figure out the game plan and definitely, navigate through it. Like everything and anything is possible. Like you will be able to navigate. You just kind of need to figure out how, right? How do I approach it? How does this person like to do their calendars? How does this person like to, email people? Because some people are, very specific on how they email sometimes, right? Or how does this person like their meetings? Like, do they like back-to-back meetings? Do they prefer to have like a 5-minute break in between their meetings? Which, like I said, goes back to calendaring, right? So, just be sure to really, really know them. Be their best friend. You are their like right hand man, woman, person. Like, really, truly get to know them. Let's see. What is the true role of an assistant? Um, I don't really know. I mean, a true role of an assistant is, like I said, to just be like support, right? But unless you want to be a career admin, which is like someone that is just an assistant, like, and that's like the job they like to do, then that's totally fine. But a true role as an assistant, I would say, is to, help out the execs, be the best person you could be, learn, grow, and level up when the time comes for you to do that, you know? And don't rush that either. Like I would say for me, I would be reaching my 3rd year in September as like an assistant, right? Not in the same desk, but in timeline total. So for me, like I feel like, yeah, it's good. And usually I would say assistants, 2 to 3 years is a good time to hop to level up, right? To hop to the next level where you want to be, if that's your trajectory and that's how you want to grow. Lexi, do you have anything to add for that topic?
Yeah, so as an assistant, you are taking a mental load off of your boss by being their second brain.
Mm-hmm.
So if your exec is creative, you're letting them be creative without having to worry about the logistics. So that's you, that's where you come in. But then at the same time, you get to put on their creative cap and their logistic cap, and you are one person trying to prioritize all the things they have to get done this week, next week, forever, the whole studio. In particular, my desk is a little difficult because I get to represent not only my company and my team to the whole animation industry, but the whole entertainment industry. So it's a high stakes position where you do need to take care and be very detail oriented.
Yes. Yeah, no, it's true. It's true. Your boss is like meeting with a lot of like high stakes people, right? Like they are very stressed, but that doesn't mean that you should be immensely stressed either. But that is your role to put on those two caps, like Lexi said. You said it so perfectly. I love that I love that
And
analogy.
also,
Um,
you are representing your boss. So they
you
view you
are.
as an extension of them.
People talk, by the way, so you are representing your boss. So be like I said in the beginning, right? Be the best person you could be kind, best foot forward, because you are representing your boss. But shall we move on?
Yeah.
Are you truly doing only calendar management? I guess we kind of answered that throughout the whole like this whole spiel. No, but it is a big part of your job. But like I said, your role is what you make of it sometimes too, right? Like be proactive. If you want to be learning something, tell your boss, right? Like the chances that they've only done one department their whole lives is very unlikely. They've probably touched many aspects of animation or like entertainment in general. And, you know, that's what you should be doing, right? Be a self-starter, learn. Don't only be doing calendars. Like, yeah, like I said, calendars and email is a big part of it, but, you know, it's what you make of it.
Yeah, and if you have a good boss, they should be your mentor. Like when they're hiring, they're not just hiring someone who can help them do the administrative tasks. Anyone can do it. It's pretty easy. But
Yeah.
in their case, they're looking for someone to mentor and be around 24/7. Well, not 24/7, 40 hours a week with overtime.
Give or take, 45. Let's say 45. But
Roughly. But
but like
yeah.
in a way, like when they are looking for their assistant, right? They are, I guess, like in my terms, like they are vibe checking you, right? Like they are spending so much time with you, and they want to nurture. Hopefully, they want to nurture you. And that's something that you yourself should be proactively looking for when you interview with people, right? Interviews is a two-way street. Um, so yeah, next topic. How can you best support your boss and get into their brain? What do you need to do to be a good assistant on a particular desk? So, first part, how can you support your boss and get into their brain? Um, I think, like I said, just like communicate with them, right? Like your job most of the time is kind of to be a mind reader as well, kind of be a mind reader as well, and kind of like predict like what's gonna come next. Like, but it's not that as hard as you think. Practice makes perfect. It just kind of takes time for you to one, to adjust, and two, like I said, to get to know them, right? So once you get to know them, it's pretty easy to kind of predict, oh, like they're probably going to move this meeting, or oh, like X, Y, and Z, right? So I would say, yeah, just being transparent, communication is the best way to kind of get into their brain. At like just ask sometimes. Like I said, never ever be afraid to ask. Like I had that philosophy ever since I started, and it has not bit me in the butt. Like it's actually gotten me to where I am today. So definitely ask questions. But at the same time, like appropriate questions, right? If it's something you can Google, don't ask. But if it's like something that you feel like, yeah, it's okay to like, I should ask, you should ask. So part two, what do you need to know to be a good assistant on a particular desk? I mean, it just really depends, right? It depends on, I guess these two questions do connect together because, it depends on your boss or your exec, right? Like once you get to know them, you will know what is needed to be good on that desk, right? So I'm trying to think of an example.
Can you talk about your interviewing process and how you prepped for this one? Like, what did you have to study?
Okay, well, I'm gonna wrap this up, and then I'll go into like, kind of studying for that interview process. So yeah, like I said, it's two and two together. You get to know them, and then you figure it out. And like I said, it takes time, so don't be too hard on yourself. But next topic, right? Interviewing, I guess. So I would say for me, when I interviewed for the role I have now, I definitely studied, just animation in general, right? Like having that knowledge of the production pipeline is super, super helpful. Like I like quizzed myself like with my iPad and like just like literally like wrote the entire production pipeline like it was like a midterm, so I could like remember in my mind. So, you know, I would be able to show that like I have this knowledge, like I'm passionate and I know what I'm talking about. That's like super, super important to know, like because you don't want hollow or empty words or discussions. Like you want content, you want the meat in there. And that I feel like that's what execs do like um about a person, is that they have that behind their words. What else would I study? Like I would definitely, if you don't, let's say you don't have assistant experience prior, talk about your day to day. Like I'm sure people use Google Calendar, right? And Gmail. Like without, being an assistant. Like I use it in my day to day, right? So like that's something that, if they ask like, oh, like, do you have experience in this? Just be like, yeah, and then like kind of just be yourself and like talk about like how you organize yourself, right? Because that would make them feel more comfortable because they're like, okay, if they know how to organize themselves, then they would know how to help me out to organize myself, right? So it kind of makes sense that way. But if you do have experience, they're probably not going to ask because they already saw like, oh, this person was already an assistant at X studios already. Like they probably do know how to organize themselves. But you never know what they're gonna ask, right? And yeah, I mean, those are like basically the only things that I studied for. Everything else, like I said, is very conversational, right? Like they want to know who you are as a person. They want to know, is this someone that I can mentor? Is this someone that I can spend 45 plus hours a week with, like, is this someone that can do the job and that will one day grow? But keep note that like some execs do prefer a career admin, like which is someone that is just that is their profession. Like they know how to do admin stuff and that is their life, but if that's the case, then like, they would explicitly tell you that that's what they're looking for most of the time. Um, but yeah, I don't know. Anything, what about you, Lexi?
When I interviewed, I studied like there was no tomorrow. I had to study the industry. I
Oh, study
studied
their content,
myself.
study their content, like whatever
Yes.
studio they're at. Yes. Sorry. That's so important. Study whatever content that they're making at that studio. Like, please, like, it will make you feel more confident about yourself. And I'm sure it'll make them happy to know that, like, oh yeah, this person knows what we're looking for, or like what shows we're trying to pitch to, or X, Y, and Z. So know your content, like I said, just know the industry in general, right? Like know what content that the other studios are making as well. Yeah. Sorry, Lexi, continue.
Yeah. But also, it's not just the content. There are so many desks that you could fill. Like at an agency, there is animation, live action, but in that, so many different genres like action, adventure, comedy, um, genre.
Genre bending.
Oh gosh. Um, and there could be ones like business and legal or HR
Recruiting.
recruiting.
Yeah, recruiting. Yeah. No, like I guess I'll chime in a little bit on like recruiting, for example, because I feel like we've been talking about creative a lot because I feel like you guys are mostly interested in that. But for recruiting, you should study STAR questions. Like if you do like legal, recruiting, business, marketing. I know there's some marketing people probably here. STAR questions, learn it, love it, breathe it, because it's for those, in short, it's kind of like taking that person through a story where have you have an issue. How did you approach it? How did you overcome it? Right. So that's a short term for it, but that's something that in those I call it corporate functions, those corporate function roles, that is like something that you should definitely like know and have in your back pocket.
Okay, so there are more desks like that. Casting is one of them. And there's also physical production. So there can be production overhead on the corporate side and then production shows. So just be aware of the difference. If you're on physical production, you're supporting an exec who is trying to make sure that all of their shows are running, functioning, getting everything they need. Whereas if you're on a show, you're making sure that the people on the show are getting everything they need. So that's why you need to be careful when you're tailoring your resume to show that you can understand what they're going through and their goals. So if you're going for an EA position over on like the show side, that means it would be helpful if you had prior production experience on an actual set, on an actual crew. For agencies, they usually prefer just general assistant work. So you can get this at school as an admin assistant, a student worker. Those are all very important jobs you can take on before you graduate.
I would also say like for whatever, any department, right? Be like that beacon of light, right? Like be like that person that people love to go to and like just talk to you, right? Like and be that friend for the team, right? Like I don't want to say cheerleader, I don't really like that term, but it's like, in some sense, yes, right? Like be that positive person that brings light to the team, right? Makes it, having fun at work makes it even more fun, right? Especially in this industry if you're passionate about it.
Being an assistant is very important. Like being an exec is really important, but if you're a bad assistant, you could ruin the company. You could ruin a whole
Yeah.
production schedule. Everything is in your hands. So when they're vibe checking you, they're also checking your judgment and how you problem solve. So
Star
that's why
questions,
star questions are
people. Star questions. Um, yes, thank you, Lexi, for
important.
mentioning. No, it's true though. It's true. Like, if you ruin like the whole production calendar, like there's gonna be repercussions. Time is money, right? The one thing that sucks is that, you know, it it is a business at the end of the day, right? So you are you do have responsibility, even if you're an assistant. Um, from the day you step foot, or not step foot, I guess we're still virtual sometimes, but the day you step foot in that on that desk, you have responsibility until whenever you decide to retire. But the last topic we have is how do you roll calls? I had to do this back in 2019, and even when I was interning, but nowadays it kind of, which is a good thing, thank God. I know some desks still do it, but it's basically picking up calls for your boss, right? Like they have a specific line that an agent might call, right? And then they call into a specific line, and then you pick up, and then you either maybe use Slack or like chat or text your boss being like, hey, like Adam is on the line, like, you know, he wants to speak to you about blah blah blah. Your boss will be, maybe they're busy, they'll be like, oh, like tell him to that I'll call him back. So you would have like a little sheet, right? A call sheet. And you would write the name, you would write where they work, the time they called, um, phone number that you can reach back to. So you would be like, oh, like what's the best number to reach back to when you're back on the phone with them? And then that list will be shared with your boss. It really does depend. Like I said, communication is like super, super, super important because everyone does rolling calls differently as well. Like it just really depends. But like I said, this is something that is not a relic of the past, but like because of the pandemic, more and more execs are just taking their own calls because it is very complicated to do it through your cell phone versus like the good old landline phone that they still have in some offices. So, but I guess the equivalent of rolling calls is like making Zoom meetings or making Google Meets, right? So I'm going to kind of roll back into like making sure that the other end has the right link. And no one's perfect. It has happened to me where I sent the wrong link before, like, back in the early days of 2020, like it's like you just need to make sure like everything is good. Is that detail orientation that they're looking for? So I would say that is like more of like a little bit more like the modern rolling call, but like, maybe some people do it. Do you still do it, Lexi? Or no?
Yeah, I do. I get called through Zoom actually by a couple of agents saying, "Where is your boss?" And I'm like, "Sorry, he's in a meeting. Can I take a message?" And then they'll go, "Okay, here's my name, here's my number. This is why
Yeah.
I'm
Yep.
calling." And then I will go tell my boss.
Yep. So yep, exactly exactly like that. So it could be scary. Like I remember like when I did it at Disney, like I was just like, oh my God, like I get like anxiety in my heart every time a phone ring. Like and I like wish that like no one calls. Like I was like, please just email. But I can't say that, of course. But in my heart, I was like, please just email me.
These
But
agents move very fast.
yeah, they move very fast. So and I admit I do that as well. I do call people, I call other assistants because sometimes you just need that answer like this. right? So, sometimes it gets the job done. But no, landlines are very scary to me still. I get trauma from it sometimes. But nothing to fear though. That someone will teach you how to do it, whichever way um, that exec does it or that studio does it, they will teach you how to do it. And like I said, everything about being an admin assistant is practice makes perfect, right? Like, it just takes time. Never be too hard on yourself. The first couple, like first 2 months, like that's like the learning time. Um, and I think that's all we have, right, Lexi? Or do you want to
Yeah,
add anything else?
that's it.
Well, time to open the floor, guys. I expect a good amount of questions because we were like pretty vague with all of these topics. So, you know, ask away. We
Yeah, if
weren't
we
vague.
put
We
you
weren't
on our
vague.
desk today and we said, take over for me, do you have any questions?
Do we unmute ourselves or do we type? What do you guys prefer?
Oh, maybe type and then we'll just go in order.
Okay.
I think that's easier. But we covered a lot. We covered a lot today. So like please ask any and all questions. Like, maybe you're curious about like, you know, what, or I don't know, like there are different types of, like I said, different types of assistants. You need more clarification on a difference between like PA admin style versus executive assistant. We can even talk about pay, I guess, if you want to as well. There is a difference, by the way, in that too. I love transparency, so we could talk about that. Ooh, questions. Okay. How Nanami is first, and she asks, "How did you find yourself in this role? How did you find yourself in this role to begin with? Could you tell us more about your journey?" Did you mean like find? What do you mean by find myself, Nanami?
Yeah, just to clarify, because when we started, we kind of had like this distinction between the admin assistant and a PA. And it's funny because when most people want to break in, at least in my sense, where it's just like with production or just like wanting to work with people, I've gotten a lot of recommendations to just be a PA. But I feel like this is also such an interesting avenue for a career. So I was curious to know how you like found out more about this role, if that makes sense.
For me, I didn't even know this type of thing existed. Back when I was interning, I always had like an idea of like, oh, like, there's the PAs that do the production, and then there's the assistants on the network or studio or corporate side, right? Um, but for me, it was kind of just something that I continued learning as I got deeper into animation and learning about the production flow, right? Like, and questioning like who is the one that helps the producer and director, right? Like it can't just be like the PA. Because the PA, once I got to be a PA, I was doing like work. Like I wasn't doing talent, like, I wasn't helping out a specific person. I was helping out the department, like the art department, for example, itself. So it was just a lot of more so learning. And, my goal is to be like a development creative exec, right? So, for me, like I thought, okay, like I need to kind of jump on a desk that does develop some way somehow like they do develop, or just learning about animation in that 360 view, right? As a producer and director assistant, you do really get that 360 view of the whole pipeline, and it's honestly so amazing to just intake and learn from that. And then part two of your question, could you tell us more about your journey? So I guess I'll start like with my job. Like my first like executive assistant job was at Disney. I was a talent acquisition coordinator. So I was actually it was kind of unique because I was doing like admin work for the head of talent acquisition at Disney Studios, but I was also doing projects as well. So, not all admin roles are pure admin, right? Not, and like I said, it is what you make of it as well, but some roles are specifically tailored to be both as well. So be on a lookout for those coordinator roles too. Sometimes you do both. And then I went to being a TV production assistant at Universal Animation, and then here at Netflix, and soon to be elsewhere. So it's very exciting. But that's my journey. So yay. Paula, I'll go to your question since that's next. In the very beginning, what was the biggest challenge you had? Wow, okay. I had a lot of challenges. I'm not gonna lie, I'm not perfect. Like I had to learn to get to like now, like my bosses always tell me, oh, like you're doing such a great job, blah blah blah. Like you're like the Tetris king, like X, Y, and Z. But like it was growing pains. Like when I was at Disney, it was literally like a boot camp for me to like literally learn anything and everything admin for like an extremely heavy desk. So for me, I would say like my growing pain was just learning communication, right? Learning how assistants communicate with each other, learning how the systems work, right? Like how do you, back in the day when you book rooms, how do you book rooms at this studio? How do you, and also I would say, like I said, rolling calls, phones were very difficult for me, like extremely difficult. Like I am, very active and open person, but phones were just something that I really struggled with. There were times where I like dropped the line and like I had to like panic call back and be like, oh my God, I'm so sorry. Like, I was like, oh, something went wrong or whatever, whatever excuse to make, because sometimes, it's just life. And I would say, yeah, I would say those were like the things that I struggled with in the very beginning. But like I said, like I could do that now very easily. It's something that you just grow and you understand it and you become a pro and it becomes like second nature. It's like driving, right? Like driving used to be really hard and scary, but then like once you drive so many times, like you're good, it's second nature. Boone, is that how you pronounce it? I want to pronounce it correctly.
Yeah.
Yeah, hi.
Hi.
So this is so thorough. I need, oh,
Was it the question?
I'm so sorry.
Okay.
Oh my God, I'm so sorry.
It's all good. I was just being nice.
But I'll answer your question. Do you have your question?
I was thinking like, how do I tailor a resume to be like admin specific, I guess?
Admin specifics.
Yeah.
So just,
Like what
I
kind
would,
of stuff are they looking for?
so they would be, it's a lot of what we actually talked about, like the topics that we covered, right? Like making sure like in your resume, like descriptors of whatever roles you had in the past, be like scheduled, like heavy calendaring, scheduled like meetings with like stakeholders or I don't know what job you had in the past, right? But like, be descriptive, but show that you know how to do calendaring. So that's super important to have in your resume. Show that you are able to work in a team setting. That's also super important. No matter if you're on the PA end or on the corporate end, having that aspect, just be like work with a crew of 50 plus people and coordinated with, whoever, right? Like to ensure X, Y, and Z. Another tip I would put on your resume for like an admin type of role would be, let's say you want to do a development desk, right? So I would say you should put like, if you have experience, of course, don't lie on your resume. Put like, oh, you know how to do script coverage, for example. That's super important to have on your resume for development roles. Knowing how to give like, if you gave notes before, right? Put that on your resume that you have given creative notes. Or if you are looking for writers, right? I would say for production, it would be more so, like I said, like working with, being able to collaborate. Also, I'm trying to think, but I feel like collaboration is like a big thing for production. Oh, like knowing how to like organize, right? Like be like, oh, like use like organize Excels for blah 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 blah. Like, you know, a lot of just more organizational things. Um, and that goes for all of them though. Like being organized and detail oriented is important for all of the jobs. And you know, don't be afraid to like put a little fun in it too on your resume. Like, you know, you don't want to blend it with everyone else. Like maybe like hobbies or interests, like on the side, if there's room for that. You know, I always think that's fun. But to each their own, to each the exact. Lexi, I'm sure you have some things to say about this.
A little bit.
You're a resume master, so
It's a team effort. But I also want to mention that if you've supported someone in a busy position, absolutely mention that. So whether that's like just your past boss or just someone in a senior position to you, that is so important because I need to know that you know how to work with busy people. Like my boss, I don't think he has time to think. And while I do say that my job is a lot of calendar management, my job is also to not kill my boss because he's in back-to-backs 9 to 6, sometimes 8 to 7, and then he keeps working after that and I don't hear from him. And I'm just trying to make sure he doesn't burn out because it does happen. Execs are still humans. And I know he wants to spend time with his family. So I'll try to put things at the top of the day and then have it lighten up after, depending on what meetings there are, who he's talking to. I'm going off on another tangent here.
oh, I want to add to that. Oh wait, just want to say something. Hello?
There's a cat.
Oh.
No, I'm kidding.
I don't know, but I want to add that like, you know, when you get into this role, make weekly meetings, make it happen with your bosses. I swear to God, like this will save your life if you make weekly one-on-ones with your boss, because that's the time where you ask questions, right? Because you're not, like I said, like, yes, you kind of have to be mind reader, but like you got to confirm the prediction, right? So like you got to be like, you got to find that time. Like I have one weekly meeting with my boss every single week in like either Tuesday or Wednesday, because that's like, you know, kind of midweek-ish to kind of figure out the next week, right? Or anything potentially important for the next Thursday and Friday. So that's super, super important. Pro tip for that. But yeah, that's all I got for that.
One more thing for that. Production management doesn't only stand for PM, it also stands for people management. So you're going to run into a lot of personalities in animation and also outside of animation. And I would love to know if you know how to deal with them. How have you handled conflicts, escalations? People get stressed out. Like there's so much going on all the time. I've had people yell at me. I've had people cry. And it's up to you how you respond to that. Do you respond with a cool head? Do you yell back at them? I mean, I hope not.
No, don't yell back.
Don't
Don't yell back. Not that I've ever done that, but
I've had to do that actually.
But you know, and
it was bad.
good for Lexi. Go you.
It was live action, and my friend was about to
strength.
get hurt, so that's
No,
what
me too. But I got yelled at in live action before, and for no reason, by the way, no reason at all. And you know, all the assistants, because I was an intern at the time, they were like, "Oh my God, so sorry!" Like they were apologizing profusely. Know that don't let yourself be abused. Stand up for yourself. You know, go to HR, transfer internship departments, do whatever it takes. Do not put yourself in that environment. Like, you know, 30 minutes to an hour is not enough to truly know someone. So like, if you see any red flags when you start a job, like make a plan to get out, but in the most peaceful way possible. That's another, sorry, too many tangents.
I wish I had that because it was on a live action set and I had no one to go to.
But that's not to say that animation is like a safe haven either. Like animation is very kind, like people are so awesome, but like there's always going to be personalities, like wherever you go there's always going to be politics, like, you know, to navigate through. And you know, that's just something we have to deal with. Like and it's not only entertainment, right? Any industry, any workplace, you know, so just be strong, stand up for yourself, and, you know, just kind of figure out how to navigate. But yeah, sorry, I feel like we answered way more than what you asked for, Boone, but I hope this is helpful for you.
It is. Thank you so much.
Yay. Paula, imposter syndrome. Yes, I did have imposter syndrome, 100%. I was like, oh my God, like, because, you know, it was my first assistant job, like, you know, being a queer person of color, right? Like, it was so like, it felt really strange. Like, I can't say like, you know, all the people I interacted with were non-BIPOC. Like, there were definitely some. It was 2019, right? We weren't in the early 2000s, but you know, for my own self, right, I felt a little bit of imposter syndrome is kind of ingrained. And you know, I still struggle with it a little bit today. But you know, it gets better with time, I think. And it's good to talk with your friends or your mentor, me, if you need any help. You know, like, yeah, like talking it out, honestly, like just helps a lot. Find your friends, right? In the good advice too, as an assistant, find your friends, find the ones that you can like truly trust and like talk to. You guys can vent with each other. Like, it really does help a lot. So that's what I have to say about that. I'll go to the next question. If Lexi doesn't have anything. You're good? Okay. What's the difference in pay? So this is like 90% of the time. It does depend studio by studio. Corporate always gets paid more than production. Like, sorry, not even 90, 95% of the time. Corporate gets paid more than production. So if pay is important to you, then definitely try being an admin assistant on the corporate side. But, you know, that's totally up to you, and like, you know, up to what job you can get at the time, right? Like, you know, I had a professor that always, and it's stuck in my mind forever. It's like, it's when timing meets preparation meets opportunity. So you know, like, it's whatever opportunity comes at that time for you. You know, don't say no to opportunity. Try whatever it is. Like, you're not stuck in that job forever. But you know, if pay, like I said, is important, corporate is better. It's more pay. I did say how I dealt with my imposter syndrome. Yeah, there you go. Michelle, what does a future in this career look like? Do you stay in this role for a while, or is it just an entry level position for other jobs in the future? Michelle, can you kind of like elaborate on that second part?
Oh, I was just wondering, like, how long does, I guess, this position last? Should I be expecting, like, to move from one production assistant job to like another production assistant job? Or do I just stay at the same studio having that same position for as long as possible? Or do I bounce between studios?
That that is a good question. I would say, for one, totally up to you. Up to what, like, you know, like, what are your goals, right? Like, what do you want to do? What do you want to end up being? Like, do you want to be a producer? Do you want to be a director? Do you want to be well, if you're doing production assistant and producer, right? Do you want to be a producer? Do you want to be a creative exec? Do you want to be a physical production exec? Do you want to be head of recruiting? Like, you know, it's really up to your goals, but I would say, you know, I wouldn't stay in the same role for more than 2 years. Like, I would say 2 years is a good time to start looking for that next steps. Or if that role you're in is not what you want to be doing in your end goal, 2 years is also a good opportunity, or even 1.5 is a good opportunity to move on to whatever you do want to do, but you would be on that assistant level if you can't find a coordinator level. But that's because, you know, let's say you're a recruiting admin, right? And you want to go into development or production. It will probably be very difficult for you to get a development or production coordinator job. So, you know, in that 1.5 years, as a recruiting admin, you would hop to either another studio, or maybe at that same studio, you have an opportunity open to move on to a development assistant or a physical production assistant desk. And then after that, you can grow from there and kind of expect like, oh, like within maybe this amount of years, like hopefully you can be promoted to a coordinator or promote, and then so on and so forth. But there's also nothing wrong with studio hopping. I've done that very much. Lexi has done it too. Like a lot of people, most people have studio hopped. There's nothing wrong. There's nothing wrong with it. Like we are in an age that, I feel like that's totally okay to do. Like maybe 20 years ago, people are like, no, you got to stay at this company like forever, or like for like 20, 30 years. It's like, do what's best for you, right? Like if you feel like you want to move to another studio just to try it out, or you want something new, then go for it. And so just an entry level. Yeah. I hope that answers that question, Michelle.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Yeah. Ellen, how do you organize your day to get all your work finished? Is it common to work overtime as a producer's assistant or PA? I'll answer the second part first. Yes, it is decently common to work overtime as a producer's assistant. PA might be a little bit more difficult. I'm not gonna lie, you're not gonna put in as much overtime. And you're probably going to be just working within the limit of 40 hours a week. On my show, Lexi. Oh my God. Man, sorry. but like it really just depends. Like, for when I was at a TV production assistant, I only worked 40. Like 40 was it. I didn't do overtime. I couldn't even get overtime if I wanted to. So it really just depends on the production. I should have started with that first. It depends on the production itself. Some teams do need the PAs to work overtime. Some teams don't. But for me as a producer and director's assistant, I usually do cap overtime every day, except for Fridays, because, depending on a team, we dedicate Fridays to like chilling a little bit. How do I organize my day? I have like this notepad that I use. It's empty now, but I write down the list of things for me to do. I also have a whiteboard, like a mini whiteboard that I use as well. I use Trello to also organize myself. I like having multiple things because that's just who I am. Like I need to like make sure I have everything, because it's just like it depends on your job, but like for me, that's how I personally organize myself. Like I'm like literally like sometimes my head is like spinning because there's just so many different things to do. And if I have everything only in one document, I may not even look at that document on that day. So for me and myself, it's good to have it in multiple areas where I'm like, oh yeah, like I still need to do that, if I'm looking in another direction. But that's me, like however you organize your day, you do that. You know yourself best. Lexi, do you want to chime in? I felt like you wanted to chime in.
I love ClickUp. It's one of my favorite things. It's so fast, and I can organize all my thoughts into different categories and have them say as separate categories. I also use my inbox as my to-do list, though that is not very effective. It still works at the end of the day. And I also write things down if I need to switch it up.
Yeah. Is that it? Yeah. Yeah. Hope that answers your question, Ellen. But don't be afraid. It's not like you're gonna work like, well, I have heard sometimes you do work weekends depending on the production, but it really does depend. Like I said, very much depends on the production. You mentioned being ready for the how did you overcome a challenge failure question or interview. How did you personally answer that question? How do you judge which challenge story would be better to share? I would just for me, I picked just one story, right? That's why it's really important, like to have like internship experience. I always tell, like whenever I have talks with people, like with college students as well, just like internship experience is important because that's how you gain these stories to tell when you do assistant interviews. So for me, I kind of just picked one story that I remembered when I was an intern in casting, and told it like a broken record. Like literally every interview, like I use that same story over and over again because like you're crafting that story. Like I crafted that story to be able to answer this, like, to go flow through STAR, right? Like, so I personally don't like, not too comfortable with saying what I said, like, right, like to y'all, but like I said, just use an experience that you have. How did you prepare, like what happened, how did you approach it, how did you overcome it? And like I said, it's really nice to use like a past experience if you have any, but if you don't, that's totally fine. Like use something in your personal life, like not too personal of course, but like something that would apply in a similar way. Jenna here. I'm not sure if this was covered. I was late, but what are the qualifications requirements for an individual to have to become an animation assistant? What will they be looking for on their resume? What do you mean by animation assistant, Jenna, if you're still here? Oh, you are.
I'm still here, but you actually just answered my question when you were talking to Boone, so you don't really have to re-elaborate on that.
Oh, no worries. I
Yeah,
mean,
yeah. But it was already answered.
well, I'm just curious though, when you say animation assistant, like what department are you talking about, right? Because it depends sometimes. Like some desks do require experience. Like I remember interviewing for some of them, and they're like, I was only considered because I had like already a year experience as an assistant. So like, it really depends. So like, what specifically like an animation assistant are you talking about? Like a PA in the corporate side, like for animation?
But honestly, I'm still very much new to those types of things because I haven't really explored on the types of assistant they were talking about. Like you said, like corporate PA, and then I didn't know there is actually a lot of positions to this, but probably my end goal is really to be a director for a 2D film someday. That's the end goal, but I'm just really starting somewhere. So if this is kind of like a good start, like a good starting level or an entry level for someone who wants to be a director someday, that's probably kind of like my question.
Oh, got it. So I would say honestly, the directing route, like you should try for like PA roles, like maybe in like story, for example, because that's like super, super, not to say one department is important than the other, all of them are equally important. But like I would say for like being a director, story is like the story team department is like super like, the meat for it. Lexi, you want to chime in?
Yeah, edit team as well.
Oh yeah, story and edit. Well, for my team, story and edit is like together. So like if you're a PA, then you're doing both of those. But not all teams do that. But I feel like it's more common nowadays though. Let's see. Next question. What are some of the career paths from assistant to executive? How do you plan to use the skills you learn as an assistant to get there? I will preface that no career path is like the path, especially, Lexi knows about me. My path is very, very, very non-traditional. And it's kind of crazy because I would have never believed I would be where I am today with the path I'm going on. But I would say, like the traditional career path is like you would be an assistant for, let's say you want to be let's use development, it's easier. A development creative exec, right? So, or head of development. You would be an assistant for development for a desk for like a VP or even the creative execs, depending on the studio. And then, you kind of move up, right? Like you become a development coordinator, and then you become a creative exec. And then after that, depending on studio, you could be a director of development and then head of development. So there are some paths where, it's super linear, but I could tell you that you don't have to always follow that, you know. You could steer off the path sometimes, and I feel like now things are definitely more open. Like people are definitely more open to people that have different experiences, because at the end of the day, for animation, like everyone is like in it to make a movie, right? Like from recruiting to production, like to development, even legal, like you're still learning like things that are transferable, right? I think that's also really important when you're interviewing, by the way, is if you don't have experience in a certain thing specifically, you can use a past experience and use that to leverage and be like, oh, like, but I've done this, and showing your transferable skills. But yeah, so let's see, how do you plan to use the skills you learn as an assistant to get there? I mean, like, let's say calendaring, for example, you're kind of going to do that for the rest of your life. Like, even though you're not doing it for someone else, you're going to be doing it for yourself. So I think that is super important to learn. It's super important to interact with like the agents and their assistants and the execs, right? Like how to communicate. Also, like I said, like gaining that just like knowledge in general of the industry, of the culture. It's really important to have those in order to like level up, right? And you know hopefully using all of those all together to continue to grow and always have like a plan, right? Like even though you might not reach that plan within that time frame you set for yourself, as long as you have that goal, I think that's amazing, and it'll keep continuing to drive, keep that drive going, because there are times where it's going to be really rough. Like, I'm really being so real right now. Like, there's going to be really rough times and you would want to quit multiple times. I'm speaking from my own experiences, but just kind of remember why you started, right? Why are you doing this? Why are you in this industry for? And always have that goal in mind to keep yourself going, but also know what's best for you as well. And if you feel like this is not for me, then there are people out there that will help you find what is there for you. Like, I know like a bunch of people that thought they wanted to be producers or do production, but they ended up being so much happier doing like artist management because they love working with artists, and or they're super happy doing being in physical production. They like being on the corporate end rather than the actual production end, right? So I would say that. Sorry, again, I went on a tangent, but helpful tangent though. Helpful tangent.
Yeah,
Lexi,
thank you so
anything?
much.
Oh, thank you for asking. But Lexi, do you have anything to add?
Yeah. So for skills you learn as an assistant, I'd also add relationship building, because that's the core of everything that we do in animation. Like, in order to get a director's vision on screen, you have to build that relationship with them so they trust you and you can work with them and have that open dialogue. So you're doing that same thing with the agents and all the assistants. And as you move up, when they become agents and you work with different execs. Totally lost my train of thought there. But like, using development as an example, learning to evaluate talent is really important. So how would you match people to the right project? How are you creating the best environment you can creatively by putting the right people in the room and evaluating their skills and seeing if they match each other?
Yeah.
However, that same skill can also be used in recruiting, not just development.
Yep. Like, that's what I use. Like, in all my interviews, they always ask me about my recruiting role. And I tell them, I was like, I loved it because I love connecting with people. I love that aspect of it, connecting with people, getting to know people, getting to know their story, right? Because at the end of the day, stories aren't just scripts. scripted, right? They're from real life experiences as well. So, and showing, like I said, the transferable skills that you have in order to do something else. But to add on to Lexi about relationship building, as what I mentioned earlier as well, like you are growing together, like kind of like think of it like as a cohort, right? In a way of like, when that person becomes an agent, you are most likely going to be like in that manager-ish level of things, right? So you guys are all growing together. You're going to continue working with these people, right? So building those relationships are really important. Is a really important thing to have. Let's see. That live action world. What are Angela asks? Oh, Angela, happy first day. What are the typical red flags to look for? Red flags, like, I would say a red flag would be your, it's really hard to say. It really does depend. Like we mentioned, if your boss yells at you a lot, that is a really big red flag that you need to get out of there. I would say another thing is if your boss is not championing you the way that they try to sell themselves to you. And remember, like I said, interviewing is a two-way street. They could say, oh, like, I love mentoring people and I want to mentor you and like help you grow and like, I'll be able to help you with X, Y, and Z. Make sure they keep their word. Like they're busy. So like, it's fine if they like reschedule or if they hold it for a little bit. But make sure that they keep their word. And a red flag would be if they don't, I would say, hold them accountable for that, right? Because you are your best like advocate for your own growth, right? No one can advocate better than you can for yourself. So I would say that, if that were to happen, that would be like a red flag. Let me see another red flag. I mean, I feel like that's what I have. I mean, I'm sure there's more. Let's see if you could chime in on that.
Listen how they talk about other people, because they can talk the same way about you. And you don't want to be connected to that. But I'd also say watch out how they do talk to you as well, because that will establish your relationship for maybe the next year. And if your mental health is suffering because of your boss, it's not worth it.
Yes,
Listen to your
100%.
gut.
Your gut is your best friend. I feel it is really your best friend though. Trust your gut. Like I said, if your gut feeling tells you you need to get out of there, get out of there. Like there's always a way. There's always a way to move to another department. There's always a way to move to another studio. Like, don't ever feel like, you're trapped, right? There's always different ways. And that's why, connecting to like career pathwise, like nothing is ever linear. I feel like don't think everything is linear. It could be crisscrossing. It could be everything. So don't ever feel like you're stuck. If you do feel like you're stuck, that's also a red flag, right? Like you want to be continuing to grow. You want to be continuing to feel happy in your job, right? Like, I know a job is a job, but like, you want to feel happy. And it's good to talk to your boss about that, right? Like if you want to attend certain meetings, right? Like to learn and grow, then do that as well. So I hope that answers your question, Angela. We could talk more another day. Does anyone else have any questions? I know we covered like a lot, like a lot, but anyone have any last standing questions? Please feel free to put it in the chat.
I hope we didn't scare you.
It's not scary at all. Like, everyone has to go through this, and just know, like I said, that it just takes time. Never be hard on yourself. And like I said, always have that goal in mind, always want to continue and grow and be hungry for like that knowledge, right? And make sure to, like I said, like so important that interviewing again is a two-way street, right? Like, yes, 30 minutes to an hour might not be enough to know a person, but if there's red flags, there is red flags. And if you guys ever, because I think, yeah, if you guys ever experience imposter syndrome, like, I think that is super important. So thank you, Paula, for bringing that up. If you guys ever do feel imposter syndrome, just know that it does get better. It's something that it just takes time. It takes time to kind of run it over and build that confidence in yourself, and really truly believe in yourself and have a lot of confidence. Don't be like cocky, but like have a lot of confidence too, in your skills and in your everyday. So yay. Yeah, thank you guys so much for attending. I really do hope that we help answer any questions and all that thing, and helped out. And I wish you guys all, I know some of you are already assistants or PAs, but like, I wish you guys good luck on if you're interviewing, and hopefully you land a job. And good luck on if you're already a PA or assistant, good luck on your journey, right? So yay. Applause.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah,
so
thank you all for
much.
coming and for asking such great questions.
Yeah, those were really good questions. Good group, good group.
Yeah, thank you
Bye.
all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good night.
Bye. Have a good
Joining.
See you,
night.
Lexi.
Thank you guys.
Bye.
Good night.
Bye. Paula.
I miss you all so
Wait,
much.
so you're